Hello, I'm Brad Sherman from America's best named city, Sherman Oaks. It's great to be here with DPSFV. I've served in Congress for 14 years only because of the hard work of the grassroots advocates that are here in this room. You may remember, I've had a safe district for a while, but you may remember that my first district included Thousand Oaks, and I got elected by a small majority, and that small majority was delivered by the hard work of the people in this room. Thank you, I will not forget. Now, I know that so many of you are disappointed that while you do get to hear me at Cal State Northridge, I won't be speaking for a full 2 hours. I have a solution for you. Come back to this campus on May 15. It will be the only time you'll ever park here for free. And come see me at the new Performing Arts Center. It will be the only time you get in there for free. But please come. There is no such thing, though, as a free lunch, although we will have free refreshments. That audience will be populated by people who need education. And I know how dedicated DPSFV is to education. Please be there to educate some others who will no doubt show up. The afternoon of May 15th, please put it on your schedule. Now, with me here is my mother, Lane Sherman. Who got me involved in politics at age 7, stuffing envelopes for an open housing candidate for a city council in the early 60s. And as a result of that act of child abuse, I've been involved in politics ever since. Not with me here today, with her parents on the East Coast, is my wife, Lisa, our 2 daughters, Molly and Naomi. And as you may have heard, we have a 3rd daughter on the way. So I will be going from, many of you knew that I was a bachelor living by myself until I was 52. Now I'll be living with 4 females. My wife tells me that that means I'm going to be outnumbered 4 to 1. I have responded to her, no honey, you will be outnumbered 4 children to 1 adult. Also with me from Shermania, my district director, and he's the West Coast Chief of Staff, Matt DeBobne. Our Director of Constituent Services, Carolina Kraywak. Our Senior Case Worker, Lisa Montano, Laura Maxey, and John Alford. On the governmental side, let me just say, imagine a federal agency makes a mistake. Even in the Obama administration, that's possible. You contact our staff, they'll work very hard, they'll solve your problem, and then I take the credit. It's an outstanding system. Now, I want to mention one person from Shermania that isn't here, Scott Abrams. Scott runs my political operation, not only getting me reelected, but working on behalf of Democratic candidates for Congress. Many of you have been on the phones to Ohio and Nevada and Arizona, and that's because Scott organized it. Scott is absolutely dedicated to the Democratic Party 6 days a week. He is very religious, and that's the only reason he's not here today. But 24/6, he's on the job. And I hope we recognize that when we pick people to be on the board, the executive board of DPSFV. Now I'm supposed to talk to you a little bit about what's going on at the federal level. Before I do that, I want to recognize my fellow elected officials who are here, starting with the man who used to run my operation. Now he runs his own operation, Mike Gatto. Also, Felipe Fuentes. And from the Community College Board, Miguel Santiago. all I can say is that recessions have consequences and elections have consequences. After 8 years of George Bush, we finally reaped the fruits of his administration in late 2008 to experience a meltdown that has begun the worst recession of most of our lifetimes. The whole country, including California, suffers from that recession. In addition, elections have consequences, and we had a true bifurcation in 2010. In 2010, just to give you a feel for how disastrous it was in the other 49 states, we lost 30% of the House seats that we had held. And we lost 30% of those Senate seats that we had held that were up. Fortunately, we had only a couple dozen Senate seats that were up. If the entire Senate had been up for re-election, it would not have been good for us in 2010. In contrast, as you well know, in California, instead of losing 30% of the House seats, we lost 0%. And I want to thank people here that maybe went down to Orange County or called up into Jerry McNerney's district in Stockton in the East Bay. But it's because of hardworking Democrats in California, we won everything statewide. There are very few states in this country who were able to do that. And so here in this room, here in California, here in the Valley, you don't realize the extreme mistake that was made in the other 49 states. I live with it every day in Washington, where I meet some perfectly nice, congenial people. They're wonderful to sit next to while the president is giving a speech. But they're convinced that patriotism means that the federal government shouldn't do anything that wasn't done under President John Adams. The best example of this is they're cheering these lawsuits about the health care plan on the theory that it is unconstitutional for the federal government to require people to buy health insurance. Now, there are a few technical differences, but the broad principle, under a broad principle, it says the federal government can't require you to buy health insurance. Franklin Roosevelt required all of us to buy old age insurance and disability insurance, and he called that package Social Security, and Lyndon Johnson has required us to all buy health insurance. It's just health insurance we can't use until we're 65. So if the broad principle is that the federal government can't require you to pay for old age insurance, disability insurance, or health insurance, then maybe the health plan we adopted last year is unconstitutional. That would be a clearly constitutional way to go. Medicare is constitutional. But as a practical matter, the next 2 years are not going to be good. You can stay here, attend DPSFV meetings, live in the Valley, and talk usually to reasonable people. Those who live in Santa Clarita, those who live in the Simi Valley, and those who serve on the floor of the House of Representatives will have a distinctly less joyous experience. Now, the Senate, well, we went from a situation where the House was the most progressive thing in Washington. We are now the least progressive thing in Washington. And we've got a situation where there's still a filibuster in the Senate, but frankly, as a practical matter, anything that's filibustered in the Senate by the Republicans wouldn't even be taken up in the House. The one distinction there is appointments and confirmations, where they still have a filibuster with a little agreement on the side. So the Senate will still be a place where good appointments, and a lot of these are not the top appointments. Look, you got a Supreme Court appointment, the entire country will demand that the Senate act on that. But lower court appointments are in the deep freeze. Assistant secretaries and undersecretaries are in the deep freeze. What you have is a Republican Party that believes that the federal government can't work and then goes out to make it true. And divided government, polarized divided government, is not an efficient system, is prone to shutdowns, delays, and inefficiencies. And we suffer from the disadvantage that it's the other party who will then point to those problems that they create and say, that's proof that we shouldn't have much of a federal government, except for wars. So, the Republicans, unfortunately, are not going to be quite as stupid as they were in 1995. Back then, they believed they could just announce they are shutting down the federal government. Isn't that wonderful? Now they're going to have a new tactic, which is have the federal government shut down, but blame the Democrats for doing it. Now, starting on March 4th and continuing really throughout this year, we are always going to be close to a possible federal shutdown. Two reasons. First, the debt limit needs to go up, and they can hold that hostage. They can extend it for a month at a time, or they can put a rider on it. They could put in the bill, oh, we'll raise the debt limit, but only if you repeal health care. Or raise the debt limit, but only if you cut education 2%. Okay, last week we extended the debt limit a little bit for a couple of weeks. We cut education 2%. Next week it's 3%. Next week it's 4%. Now, in the game of chicken paid by inebriated teenage boys, the two cars go toward each other. But at least each of those inebriated drivers knows that if the cars actually collide, it's not good for them. The difference in Washington is the two cars are going together and both sides are putting together plans on how to blame the other side for the damage if the cars collide. And so the Republicans will not refuse to pass a debt limit increase. They'll simply put provisions on it that are unacceptable. Likewise, even before the debt limit, on March 4th, the continuing resolution expires. All the federal agencies become unfunded. The legal memos are out there as to which departments stay open and which close. That's not good. So they'll pass a new continuing resolution, but with what riders and with what exceptions and with what cuts. And we are going to be faced with tactics that they will use. Tactic number one,